Hi, my name is James Gurney. I'm the writer and creator of Dinotopia, A Land Apart from Time, which is an adventure story about a lost world where people and dinosaurs live mostly peaceably together. Yeah, when I was about 10 or 11, my parents brought me up to San Francisco, near where I lived in California, and we saw two museum exhibits. One was a science museum that had a skeleton of an Allosaurus, a big meat-eating dinosaur. And I remember being completely spellbound looking at the skeleton, thinking, is it alive or was it once alive? And I had this fantasy that at nighttime the skeleton would step off of its platform and tiptoe through the hallways. And then right before the sun came up in the morning, like Dracula, it would go back to its position and pose again. As a kid, I always loved looking at the illustrations by the Golden Age illustrators. We had a set of the adventure classics, the Scribner's editions with the N.C. Wyeth illustrations, and I loved poring over those. I would also tiptoe out in the hallway and look at the old National Geographics from the 20s and read about the discovery of these lost empires. And that got me thinking about lost worlds and archaeology, even as a young kid. Later on in college, I went to major in archaeology, but I always had this interest in art and developed that later. Yeah, during my art school years, I had a chance to travel across America with a sketchbook. I was inspired by people like Charles Kuralt and John Steinbeck, who had written about their adventures traveling around America, but no one had really done that with a sketchbook. So a friend of mine and I jumped on the freight trains, and we rode from Los Angeles to Phoenix and all the way across to Nashville, along the way sleeping in graveyards and on rooftops, meeting gravestone cutters and lumberjacks. And we developed a bunch of sketches, which later became a book called The Artist's Guide to Sketching. And ever since then, even to the present time, I've been really interested in getting outdoors as much as possible to draw and to paint from nature. Dinotopia is a combination of my interest in dinosaurs and in archaeology and lost worlds. As a kid, I always had a fantasy of creating my own fantasy world, complete in every detail, all the way down to the hinges on the doors and all the costumes. And when I started learning about how dinosaurs how our view of them has changed in recent years, it got me interested in combining the two together. I did a series of paintings loosely under the title of Lost Empires. One of them was a parade of people and dinosaurs through a Roman-style city, and another one was a waterfall city built in the heart of a big waterfall. And I got the idea of combining those pictures together into a storybook that follows the story of a 19th century explorer. So it really started to gel when I drew a map of Dinotopia. I just drew the outline shape and then said mountains here, desert there, jungle there. And eventually this formed into a 160-page book where I could really take people deeply into this world. Dinotopia has come out in 18 languages in something like 30 countries. I really got a kick out of seeing the Chinese edition because the way the title translates, I was told, is Terrible Lizard Happy Dream Kingdom, which is a nice way to think of Dinotopia. Dinotopia is a word that's short for dinosaur utopia. So it's an ideal world, a paradise where people and dinosaurs live together and where in a way the dinosaurs have domesticated the humans rather than vice versa. Each Dinotopia picture takes about anywhere from a day or two to a month or two for the more elaborate paintings. And since the books are about 160 pages long, it ends up being at least a year and a half or 2 years just to do the artwork. So it's a pretty long-term project altogether from start to finish. Yeah, to make the dinosaurs as real as possible, I really have to look at whatever I can in our world that I can use as a basis. So elephants are a good beginning point for reconstructing a long-necked sauropod. The way the skin wrinkles, the way they shift their weight around is something that you'd probably see is similar in dinosaurs. The thing I love about dinosaurs is that they're on that balance point between fantasy and reality. It might be hard to believe that mermaids and dragons really existed, but we know dinosaurs did. We can see their footprints and we can see their skeletons, and yet we can't really photograph them or see them except in our imagination. And I love anything that's on that balance point between some impossible thing, or something we've never seen, and then something that's painted realistically so we can almost believe it's really there. The research end of creating a fantasy world is really a big part of the fun for me. And I've tried to go to places that are as much like the fantasy world that I'm trying to develop. So for example, we went to Venice, and I did a lot of watercolor studies in Venice, just to get a feel of the way the light plays on the water and on the stones in a place like that. And then I transformed that into Waterfall City. We also went to Niagara Falls, and I did some little oil studies of the way the water looks at different times of day. And also traveled to the American Southwest desert to look at the different kinds of rock textures and forms when I developed Canyon City, which is a part of Dinotopia. This is where the young pilots go to learn how to fly the giant pterosaurs. Well, in order to develop the characters in my stories, I looked for real people to pose. Sometimes I posed for them myself. For some of the parade scenes, I've used my own kids, who are the cheapest models, and they appear in the books as the kids in the parade scenes. But also neighborhood kids and friends of ours who've come over for posing sessions. We'll get out in the backyard and put on all these outrageous costumes. Someone might make a plate of cookies, and it's like a big party. When we lived in the Village, a small town in upstate New York, we had a posing session like this while next door some contractors were working on the roof of the house, and they kept climbing over the fence saying, "What's going on over there? You guys this is the weirdest party I've ever seen." So we invited them over and put them in these long red capes, and they became part of the parade. Yeah, every picture, especially the more elaborate ones, has to go through a lot of stages from the beginning idea to the final painting. Starting with a concept of the story, what's the story or the mood or the emotion you want to get across, to thumbnail sketches to work out the composition, studies from the model, final composition, color sketches. All those different steps lead to the point where you actually approach the final picture. The more work goes into those earlier stages, the easier the final painting is to accomplish. And anytime I try to cut the corners early on, I run into a jam in the final picture usually. So it's really true what the old masters said, that the hard work is worth it in the early stages, and that's the part you don't usually get to see in an artist's work. The world of Dinotopia keeps unfolding for me into new areas, and I almost feel like an explorer myself as I write the books. For example, in Chandara, where we'll be visiting in the new book, are all the feathered dinosaurs that we've been hearing about lately. And they do exist in Dinotopia. I have a pet parakeet that sits next to me while I'm painting. And he likes to sometimes jump on my shoulder. And it reminds me that birds are actually dinosaurs that are alive today. They're direct descendants of dinosaurs. And when I watch how he preens and how he moves and how he calls and all these sorts of things, I realize that it's not that different from the way a dinosaur would move and behave. So you'll probably see some things in the book that are inspired by my pet parakeet. I sometimes get letters from kids who say, "Mr. Gurney, is Dinotopia real? Please tell me. My brother and I are having an argument, and don't lie." And so I tell them that this is a place that is real in a different way. I've never been there. I've never actually seen Dinotopia with my own eyes. But I think there are a lot of things in this world that are real that we can't verify with our senses, but that are real in some other way. And to me, that's where Dinotopia exists.
We sing together, land and beast, in Dinotopia from west to east, a celebration of the life we share so new. Each voice in harmony joins me and you.